Hello, and welcome back to the Nine Sports Podcast, Hockey Edition. I'm your host, Maya Smith, and it is Aries season. And normally I wouldn't talk about astrology on this podcast, but I have a very good reason because I am joined by Dylan Nazareth today, and we discovered earlier this week that we are basically birthday twins. I'm
Let's
born
go.
5th, and Dylan is born on April 4th. So we're bringing full Aries energy to this podcast.
That's right. I'm fired up, excited to be here. Longtime fan of this podcast. So, here we go.
Thank you. I'm so honored that you listen. And yeah, Dylan has been covering the Montréal Victoire for the Ice Garden this season. But we were just talking. You also do some work in soccer and then also the NHL and figure skating. So very well rounded. You know your sports. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about the outcome of basically what we've been building up to for the last two podcast episodes, the NCAA National Championship final. It's been crowned, as well as the Patty Kazmaier Award. So we're going to start with that. And then we're going to get Dylan's thoughts on the Montreal Victoire. And we actually did have a couple of announcements from the team this week, and they're playing right after we record this. So we've got lots to talk about. And then Montreal is also involved in the battle for first place, which right now we have three teams that are like right neck and neck for first place, which is super exciting. So we've got lots to talk about. Let's just jump in with the number one at the 9. So the number one at the 9, Wisconsin wins its second straight NCAA title, and Caroline Harvey takes home the Patty Kazmaier Award. We kind of set it up last week, but it did come down to the same final that we've had for the last 4 years, Ohio State and Wisconsin came out on top for the second year in a row. The Buckeyes of Ohio State, they did win the WCHA title, but Wisconsin got their revenge, taking the national title, and they came out hot. They were leading until the third period. They were up 2-0. Ohio State did try and storm back, but they weren't able to get the win. And so with that, Lacey Eden is the first NCAA Div 1 women's player to win 4 national championships, which, like, I was trying to do the math in my head, and it's because of a COVID year and doing your master's and all these things, but still, it's super cool. And then also from Wisconsin, Caroline Harvey won the Patty Kazmaier Award. So, like, this is fantastic from an NCAA perspective, but there are a lot of repercussions from this for the PWHL. First of all, Caroline Harvey, what do you think, Dylan? Just like insane player.
Yeah, I mean, no, she's not much to write home about. I don't know. Like,
No.
what can you say about her at this point? I mean, she's named Olympic MVP. She wins the Patty Kazmaier. She leads her team to another NCAA championship. Like, she's incredible. She's generational. I'm really excited to watch her jump to the pros. Everything I've seen from her in college has been just absolutely incredible. And yeah, I mean, I think we're at a point where there's pretty much nothing else you can say about her that's not been said. 66 or 64 points in 33 games. It's just amazing. She controls the play so well from the back end. So it's really fun to watch, and I'm excited to see that jump.
And those numbers are crazy, but those numbers are crazy for a defender as well. Like, that's, yeah. I mean, there's been a lot. I don't know if you see the memes, if you're unfortunately as online as I am, but they're pretty much everyone's just like tank for Harvey. Everybody's convinced that whoever, I guess it's not really tanking in the PWHL now, but whoever wins the gold plan will take her first overall. What do you think?
I mean, I was kind of exciting. I'm excited to see a race for that because now we have this gold plan where you kind of battle in those last games to get a player. Not that I think the players are really going to be going onto the ice thinking about which draft position they're going to get, but I still think it's interesting. But I mean, it's funny because I think a few months ago or even earlier this season, Abby Murphy was pretty well thought to be kind of that consensus number one. And just after the season KK Harvey has had, I kind of think there's no doubt that she goes number one. I mean, I was even trying to think about it from the perspective of kind of like the needs of a team. And I just can't think of a team that wouldn't need her, especially after expansion, depending like what happens this summer, depending how many expansion teams, because I think we can safely assume there's at least going to be 2. It seems to be. We don't really know. But, even a team like the Vancouver Golden Eyes, I was thinking about, because unfortunately they're low in the standings right now and they could end up with that number 1 pick. But even though they have a player like Sophie Jakes right now who sort of fills a similar role as KK Harvey would, Well, there's no guarantee they keep her through expansion, though I think they would probably try to. And I also think it wouldn't hurt to bring in a player like KK Harvey on top of that. So
Yeah.
I'm like, it's such a stacked draft class this year, and it really just speaks to the fact that KK Harvey is so talented because she's still, I would say, pretty much the consensus number one at this point.
And she really adds like um something for any team, even if they are like pretty strong defensively. Like I don't think we'll see Boston end up with that opportunity, but they are a team that is very strong defensively and has a strong goaltender. But I think you would still take the chance on her. I think Abby Murphy is going to be very interesting. I think her style of play is like both her best feature and also her worst feature. And so not really knowing how that will translate to the PWHL, I think maybe teams are a little bit, I don't know, concerned about taking that step. But I mean, like as you said, it's such a deep draft. Like all of the teams are going to come out of it with a career like player if they can keep them after expansion. And yeah, so some of the other Patty Kazmaier Award winners, Casey O'Brien, who went really high in the draft. She wasn't first, but to New York last year. Izzy Daniel, Sophie Jakes, who you were just talking about, Taylor Heisey, Erin Frankel, who just set like a record for the most shutouts in a season with 6 on back-to-back shutouts. And Renee Debian, like these are all, I mean, like I could keep going. Kendall Coyne, Alex Carpenter, just like players that have gone on to have fantastic careers. And I don't think that Caroline Harvey will be any different. And there are so many players from Wisconsin that will likely enter the PWHL and go very high in the draft, like Lacey Eden, 4 national championships in a 6-year career. Like that's just unheard of.
Yeah. No, I think it's funny too because it's such a deep draft class. I think there's so many names that are kind of getting less attention, but are still so exciting. Like Kirsten Sims is a player who just had circle. Like, I'm not the biggest college hockey watcher, especially living in Canada, but Kirsten Sims, watching last year at the Frozen Four when she got that game time penalty shot where coach said like, "Who wants it?" and she without hesitation put her hand up. And there's something about her that she just screams Toronto Scepter to me. I don't know what I'm seeing, but there's just that she just seems to have that team mentality and that kind of spark, that energy. I'd love to see her go there, but she's a player who'll probably go, I mean, 4th, 5th overall. We don't really know yet, but I think that there's players like her, players like Lacey Eden, Tessa Janecki, who just like are so exciting and are not even in that kind of top tier, so to speak, of the draft class. So like you said, it's a really exciting one. I mean, Wisconsin has a lot to offer. And I think it's exciting too, just for teams that are anxious about losing a lot in expansion, which they could and probably will. These, the players you draft first overall this year are yours to keep because that'll probably happen if it goes the same as last year after expansion. So even if you lose some big players, you're also bringing in probably the next wave of the superstars of the PWHL.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we've seen that with teams like New York and Boston this year who lost a lot in the expansion draft, but they're having great years. And the rookies that are coming in are fantastic. And some of the rookies that we're seeing have great years, like they wouldn't even be in the conversation with Caroline Harvey. But like the fact that teams can go into the draft and kind of know that they will likely be able to take 1 or 2 of these like franchise players is, as you said, like so good because we have no idea what expansion is going to look like at this point. And there were some rumors that went around this week, but there really has not been any communication from the league about where those teams will be, how many. So still a lot of things to happen before next season. But this season, let's check in on the Montreal Victoire. Honestly, like such an exciting team, I was like trying to explain it to my coworkers at my other job because we were at a sports bar and we were watching the Victoire game last week. And I just have such a respect for this team. So I'm interested because what happened this week is Marie-Philippe Poulin is on long-term injured reserve retroactively to when she got hurt kind of in the middle of this month. And then Nadia, I should have looked this up, Mativi?
Believe so, yes.
Yeah.
She's Italian.
Yeah. She signed with the team to kind of fill that spot. She played for Team Italy at the Olympics. So those are some of the big news. They also got Sam Isbell as a reserve player this week as well. They're sitting third when we're recording this. They could move up tonight, I think. But how are you feeling about them as a whole now that we're like 2/3 of the way through this season?
Yeah, I think I'm feeling good. I mean, it's been a good season for them. You'll notice I'm wearing my Montreal Victoire maroon tonight, so we're all
Hmm.
ready to talk about it. But I think that something that really stuck with me talking to Coach Corey Chevry beginning of the season, I should say about 5 or 6 games into the season, is they didn't have the greatest start. They had a good start, but they have high expectations on this team because obviously they're just kind of loaded with really good veteran talent. And she said it's a lot about a process. It's a process of growth, and in each game they're learning something. And as a fan, you never kind of want to see your team learning because you want to see them winning. But
Hmm.
I think it really shows because I think coming out of the Olympic break, they came out pretty hot. They won 3 games straight in a row with pretty commanding games. Um, and that loss of Ambrose just didn't seem to kind of affect them too much. She's been on LTIR since the Olympic break, but she, in her place, Nicole Gosling has really stepped up, the rookie defender, and they play kind of similar roles. And Nicole Gosling has really elevated her game, and you could see during the Olympic break that she kind of had put a lot of work into that. She mentioned to me when I spoke to her last week that not making Team Canada is kind of making her play with just a bit of a chip on her shoulder and just that kind of extra push to make it to that World's team in November as well. So I think they've weathered that pretty well. That being said, the loss of Poulin is a pretty heavy one. So we can get into that, but it's interesting to see how they'll play through that. It'll be a tough kind of final stretch of the season for them without her.
Yeah, it's like obviously she came back after the Olympics. This seems to be like a re-aggravated injury after the Olympics, but one of many teams to lose their one of their top players to Olympic injury. Yeah, I think let's talk about the injuries next because as you mentioned Ambrose and you mentioned Poulin, like are you concerned or do you think there's enough other depth that they can kind of continue to rally, continue to uphold that first or second place kind of slot?
Yeah, well, in terms of the actual injuries, I'm not too concerned. I would say Ambrose, like, it's a bit unclear what's happening there. The injury didn't seem too serious initially, but she has been out for some time. She skated the other day, but left the ice after about 5 minutes, so that's always a little concerning. Anyone who follows the Victoire closely knows that Chevry is a coach who keeps her cards very close. So Sauvageau is a GM. They don't like to talk about injuries. They don't like to say what's happening. They'll often tell you day to day, or
Mhm.
you don't really have an update.
Precautionary, yeah.
Yeah, you don't really know who's returning when, and that's their decision to make. But it can be frustrating when we want a little more information update. With regards to Poulin, I do have the impression that they are holding her just kind of not precautionary. She obviously plays in LTIR, but just kind of to err on the safe side and get her back to kind of full strength heading into the playoff because they know they're in a relatively good position right now, and their depth is stepping up more than ever. That being said, I can't actually speak to the extent of Poulin or Ambrose's injuries because I obviously
Yeah.
don't know. But yeah, they're in terms of their play, I think Poulin's a really tough loss because she's not just like losing your best scorer or losing a good defender. She kind of plays every role on the team. She's kind of your best penalty killer. She's your best on the power play. When you need that gritty goal, she scores the gritty goal, but she also makes kind of the big play to push, throw her body, and like she's very physical. So she kind of does everything. So it's a bit of a loss for the team. I will say a year ago, if they'd lost Poulin, I would call this team dead in the water just because at the time it just didn't seem like they had depth that was really stepping up. They had great players, but it wasn't clicking. Now things
Mhm.
have really changed. Things have really turned around. The secondary scoring for the team has come a long way, and especially since the Olympic break, I think there's a little bit more kind of motivation in this group. It seems to be. So they're scoring a lot more, which is great, and they're scoring without Poulin being listed on that score sheet. So that's big. And like I said, Gosling stepping up in Ambrose's absence defensively. But the last month is the tightest, right? Like we play the most games of the season through this month. I think there's 9 games left, and I don't know if they've played that many in this short a stretch.
Mhm.
So I think those minutes might start to eat on some of the players. So I'm kind of curious to see how they manage that. Obviously the signing of Madavi is a good one. Um, it's like she's an interesting player. She was SDHL Defender of the Year last year. So Montreal's deciding to run with 7 defenders now instead of their 13 forward group
Mhm.
they were usually doing. But I do think at the same time, like, that's not a super intriguing move to me, just because Chevry is pretty loyal to her lines and the way she likes to play and divvy up minutes. So if we see Matavi getting like more minutes, I don't imagine it'll be at least for a few games until she's earned some trust, unless she's a crazy game breaker and makes a huge splash against the Frost tonight. But yeah, I don't think she'll be too big a player, too big a difference maker. But in terms of how they kind of manage this, I think it'll be interesting to see, because yeah, Poulin is just a really big loss across kind of all facets of the game, and you have a lot more games now to come.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough time because it's like the playoffs are theoretically, the time that you want to have your team rested for. So it makes sense to hold out your best player, but at the same time, you have a lot of games coming up and you have tough games. Like when people are listening to this, the Frost game from tonight will be done, but that's a really tough matchup. And when I was talking to Brian Adalski, the coach for the Vancouver Golden Knights, he was saying every team is a tough matchup in this entire league. And I mean, when you're in second last place, it's maybe more of a tough matchup. But yeah, a lot of hockey to be played. We know that this team usually has a really good regular season, either finishing first or near the top. But then the playoffs are kind of a different story. Two first round exits. And I'm wondering if there's anything you think this team is doing differently that would change that and give them a chance to get that play for a championship, or if you think we're going to see kind of the same, I don't know, end to the season
Yeah.
for this.
It's something I think about a lot, because it's kind of the lingering question with this team. Both years they've come into the playoffs and then just been stunted by a hot goalie. But the problem with the PWHL is pretty much every team has a goalie who can get hot, because it's a small league right now. So that being said, I do think it is a pretty different team this year. I think some of the changes they've made have just given them a bit more bite kind of to their game. And I think that the physicality is really a difference maker that will bring them in the playoffs. They just seem to be kind of pushing more and not kind of sitting back in these important games. Some stats that I think kind of interesting is that they have 13 blocks per 60. So they're second in the league behind the Torrent, which is, they were blocking a lot of shots last year. The Torrent obviously took most of their blue line. Now the Torrent's blocking a lot of shots, but the Victoire still are as well. So they're protecting their goalie really well, and they're allowing the fewest goals against in the league. I think they're at, I wrote it down here. They're at 32 goals against so far this season through 21 games, which is actually insane when you put it out there. But they also are stepping up and scoring. So a big factor behind that is Amrene Debian net, but their defense has really stepped up as well. So I think that just overall, they just look like a bit more of a complete team. They're taking the most shots per game in the league, but they're also allowing the fewest shots against. So there's just all these little numbers that kind of point to little parts of their game that just seem to be improving. The depth is stepping up, and I think that's been a huge factor. Amrene Debian, obviously, just having a stellar year. Her numbers are at like 1.23 goals against average through 18 games played, I believe. So yeah, it's unbelievable what she's doing in net. And if they can get Poulin healthy back, or even a kind of a half healthy Poulin, is better than a lot of hockey players. So I do think there's something different about this team this year. I think they just have a bit more bite to their game, and I don't see them getting into the playoffs and going stale the way they did the last 2 years. That being said, both years I thought differently about how they would play in the playoffs. So we'll see. We will see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the playoffs are like their own beast. We have no idea. Things could change so much in the next 9 games or whatever's left. And we'll talk about kind of those top teams in a second. But when you talk about the physicality, do you think Abby Rock has made a big difference on that side? Because I know her play is polarizing. She takes a lot of penalties and sometimes at bad times, but she's also a physical player. She brings a lot of energy. How do you think she's been fitting in with the team?
I mean, honestly, I'm a big Abby Rock fan. I think that you're right. She does take some unfortunate penalties. I think she's also a player who's spoken very openly about kind of trying to find the line of officiating in the PWHL and not feeling it's been super consistent. That's not me making a judgment on the calls that she takes, but that's just something that she talks about a lot, and I kind of see her point. I think she's been incredible offensively. I mean, she plays on that line with Poulin and Stacey so well. The chemistry they've found has been really, really impressive. I think some people have a tendency to believe that just anyone could play with Poulin and Stacey, and maybe they could, but I think Rock really takes it another step forward. And they've all three talked about just kind of how they've learned to read each other really, really well. And I think that when I talk about kind of bringing that bite to their game, bringing that kind of grittiness, she is a big part of that, right? Like she gets in those plays, she gets in those hard plays. It ends up in penalties sometimes, and that's not great. But Montreal also has one of the best penalty kills in the league. So if you ever have a team that could take a player that can take some penalties at bad times, Montreal might be one. Obviously, you'd rather not, but it happens. But yeah, overall, I think, Abby Rock's positives outweigh her negatives at this point. She's had some cold points scoring wise in the season, but I think that she's kind of finding her groove again. So I think that in terms of like a difference maker when it comes to the playoffs in Montreal, I really think she'll be someone that can really be a game breaker for how they played versus previous years. Just to add a little bit more of that spark that they've been missing when they really need to find those important goals.
For sure. And like, because she played on the Sirens for her first 2 years in this league, we have no idea what playoff Abby Rock looks like. And that could just be a whole other level of energy and productivity. And yeah, so like, it's the perfect time to find your footing. And I agree. I think it's been a great like addition to this team. One of those key pieces that could help evade a first round exit. So one of the teams that Montreal will likely face, unless they finish first and they get to pick kind of the worst of the four, Boston, worst. Boston, Minnesota, and Montreal are all right at the top of the league, which is really exciting. I think around this time and as we get closer to the end of the season, the big story is always who's on the cut line, right? Like who's going to make the playoffs, especially now that we have 2 more teams and no more playoff spots. But at the same time, as I was reminded by the strange talking puck that they have at intermission in the games now, the first place team gets to pick their opponent, and that is like a big thing in this league. Like it hasn't necessarily worked out, but it is a creative, thing that this league does. And so watching that battle for first place is also going to be super exciting. I think Boston is in charge of it right now in the top spot when we're filming. They won yesterday over the Golden Eyes, but all three teams are playing very different hockey right now. Like Minnesota scoring a lot of goals, winning a lot of games. Montreal, as you were saying, they have like very few goals against. They're playing really, really strong defensive hockey. And then Boston isn't really scoring goals, but they're not really giving up goals either. So it's all just like such interesting ways of going about hockey in this league. Do you think that one of these teams is going to lose it before the playoffs?
It's tough to say, but I do a little bit. I have constantly underestimated the Boston Fleet, and I will do so again right now. I just they're a great team, but I just think the type of hockey they're playing is not sustainable. I would argue that the best hockey they played was through the first kind of 5-6 games of the season. But now other teams are starting to catch on to their tricks. Now, that being said, they just posted back-to-back shutouts against the Seattle Torrent and the Vancouver Golden Eyes. So obviously they're still being impressive, but I think that Erin Frankel is covering up a lot, and the team's defensive unit, which is just so strong, is covering up a lot. But that kind of hold tight and then try and sneak in a goal or two, I don't know if that's going to hold up come playoff time. I mean, you can speak to that Vancouver Golden Eyes game yesterday. Just it's not the kind of hockey that's going to work out for them long term, I think, in my opinion. And it just seems to me that they've peaked a little bit too early. So I wonder if any team is going to have a bit of struggle kind of keeping that momentum up. It might be them. Also, I don't know if you can really make a strength of schedule argument at this point in the league because, again, like we said, there's just so many tough opponents. But I did take a look at the 3 schedules remaining for these teams. And Boston do have to play Montreal and Minnesota twice, which is really interesting just because it's obviously 4 really tough matchups for them. And each time they play one of those teams, the other one benefits, right? Because either way, someone's not getting out of it with points. So if either Montreal or Minnesota can come away with 2 wins over Boston in those games, I mean, that would be pretty detrimental. That being said, I think also Montreal, like I've expressed, the injuries could have some effect on their ability to kind of remain real tight and strong through that last stretch. So I think, we'll have to see on that.
Yeah, I agree. And I saw some people saying yesterday after the Fleet game, like, It's one thing to play this type of hockey against the Torrent, the Golden Eyes, the Charge. It's a very different thing to play that style of play against the Frost. Like when you go up against a team that is scoring so many goals and you don't like to score and you're just kind of relying on your defense, like at some point something has to give, right? Either Minnesota doesn't score any goals or Boston loses, basically, because if you're not scoring more than one goal or two goals a game, if your goaltender can't keep you to that score, then you can't get it done. So I agree. I think they're kind of the most at risk. But as you said, like they're a very easy team to underestimate. And then they do have some fantastic games, or Erin Frankel makes a save that you're just like, nobody else. like how is she doing this? And so yeah, I think they're a very interesting team. I think Minnesota's ability to continue to win right now has been like impressing me because they're the team that I kind of thought would fare the worst after the Olympic break, because in the past, after international breaks, they have not been super successful. Like they've kind of lost their momentum, but they just are running. Like I don't see a lot of weaknesses. If when they were in town earlier this week, or like on the weekend, they didn't have Nicole Hensley, which is interesting. I'm not sure if she's injured. Like, I don't think she's on LTIR, but I think she's like day to day. Goaltending is the only question that I have about Minnesota, because I don't know that, like, if Maddie Rooney can't compete at the level she's competing at, I think they could be in trouble.
Yeah, but it's interesting, I find, because I think I'm one to kind of question the Frost goaltending, but then I was really looking into the numbers today, and Hensley and Rooney are kind of having like career years. And I think it's kind of going under the radar because everyone's focused on how many goals they're scoring, but Minnesota's only conceded 42 goals in 21 games this year. Both Hensley and Rooney are under 2 goals against average, which is pretty nuts considering like all the goaltending attention is on Renee Desbiens and Erin Frankel, but Minnesota boasts right now like a tandem that is just so strong. And I think they are too. They're not Frankel or Desbiens, but they're both goalies who have proven they can step up when it matters. And come playoff time, they've done that both years. And I think that now kind of they're finding that groove even, in the regular season. It's quite impressive to watch because now you have a team that is scoring a lot. You have 2 goalies who just seem to be locked in. And I think they're at like a plus 25 goal differential at this point, which is insane.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's kind of hard to imagine what can go wrong with Minnesota. I mean, they lost to Montreal 4-0, one of the first games out of the Olympic break. But I don't think that really speaks to the quality of their game. I think hockey is one of those sports where things can go either way on a given night. But since then, they've been on a 5-game streak. So, and obviously we're recording now. There's going to be the results of the Minnesota-Montreal game coming out tomorrow, so we won't know, like when this comes out, we won't know the score, but no matter what happens in that game, I'm very impressed by what Minnesota is doing right now, and I think this might be the first season we see them kind of come out on top.
Yeah, and I've said this a few times, but if you're looking for not a three-peat, it's really scary to watch this Minnesota Frost team because they usually don't enter the playoffs as the best team. They're usually at the bottom. And I think Ken Klee said something about that in the media availability after the game against the Golden Eyes. But they are full steam ahead, hoping to snag one of those top 2 spots. And in previous years, they were like getting in the day of the cutoff. So
they almost missed last year, if I remember right.
Yeah.
It was pretty close.
It was like really, really close. So
yeah. I also just want to shout out to Reed Lemker, our Minnesota Frost reporter. Wrote a great piece interviewing Taylor Heisey. It was really interesting. Yeah. She's just been on a tear as well recently. So I think that's just like a key piece for them, that even though Kendall Coyne-Schofield's out, she has been really elevating her game and putting herself kind of back into that MVP conversation. So that should be just an interesting one to watch through the end of the year.
Absolutely. And Kelly Panic as well is having a fantastic year. Yeah, I'll leave that article linked down below. But yes, awesome work by Reed. And yeah, and I mean, it could be anyone's game. And then, of course, we still have that 4th kind of spot to determine. Likely, like in my mind, it's going to either New York or Ottawa. I don't see either of the expansion teams making a push, but go on a run right now and you never know what will happen.
Scepters might surprise you too.
Oh yeah, why am I'm not thinking about that.
They always surprise us,
Forgot about
and
that.
I think
Yeah.
we've all kinda counted them out at this point. I think Ottawa and New York are just kind of 2 more interesting teams right now, just because of the fact that I mean, I guess Ottawa literally made the finals last year, but
Mhm.
just because Toronto has looked better in the real regular season through the last 2
Then
years, and
this
this year they
yeah.
just don't look as good. I think we all kind of have discounted what Troy Ryan can do. Fair enough,
Mhm.
maybe. So, yeah, I think we're all kind of forgetting about the Toronto Scepters, but I personally wouldn't be surprised to see them land in that 4th spot.
Yeah, I was literally forgetting that they existed for a minute, but
Yeah,
that's what you get when it's been a long day. But yes, I
yeah,
agree. Like it'll be one of those I think it'll come down to those 3 and then Vancouver and Seattle, whoever can lose enough games to get eliminated and then start racking those points back up to
start losing, then
get one of
start
those
winning.
picks. Yeah, exactly. All right. So, let's talk about the top shelf prediction for the week. Last week, both Giselle and Emma were right. They said Caroline Harvey would win the Patty Kazmaier Award. I don't know that anybody would have bet against them. But Dylan, what is your prediction for this week?
All right. I'm keeping the good times rolling. I got a prediction it's gonna be a winner.
Okay.
Minnesota decisively beats Boston this Sunday. This
All
Sunday,
right.
Minnesota and Boston have their first of their remaining 2 meetings this season. I think, like we talked about, it'll be a really interesting one for kind of the implications of that first place position in the PWHL standings. The
Mhm.
last time Minnesota and Boston came head to head, Minnesota took it 5-2. So we know that they can solve Erin Frankel. Of course, there's 2 empty netters in that one. But I think that this is one for Minnesota for the taking. I think this is when we're going to start seeing some of Boston's weaknesses exposed. And depending how things go between Minnesota and Montreal, that could see Minnesota sneak to the top of the table for the first time this season. So my prediction, Minnesota takes the win over Boston, and I believe it'll be at least 2 goals ahead.
Nice. I like it. And I appreciate that despite me having no idea what you were going to say, it perfectly ties in to our conversation. So,
Perfect.
awesome. Well, definitely tune in next week to and also watch the game, and we'll see if you are correct. But thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, you'll have to keep the streak going. This would
Yeah.
be 3 in a row. Thanks for joining us this week, Dylan. Where can people find you?
Oh, find me on Twitter. I don't know what my handle is, but my name is Dylan
I'll put
Nazareth.
it
So look
in
me up.
the
9 Sports, Dylan Nazareth, something, something, and give me a follow. Yeah. If you like the
yeah.
Victoire or hockey.
Awesome. And yeah, I'll link that down below. But yeah, thank you for joining us and thank you everybody for
Awesome.
listening. If you aren't already subscribed or following, definitely do that. And if you have the ability to, a subscription to the 9 Sports really helps us and all the other fantastic journalists that we work with. And we'll be back next week.
Later.